Welcome to what must be the ultimate collection of BMW M3s. Over the next 5 films, we're going to look at the zenith from every generation, from E30 all the way to F80. And in this first film, we'll start with this, the E30 Sport Evo. Before we go into the specifics of this ultimate spec sport evolution, I think it's worth laying down some foundations. After all, the E30 is the M3 upon which the famous dynasty was built. The original is a proper homologation special. That's to say, the race car was designed first and then the necessary changes were made to the road car to satisfy the regulations. 5,000 needed to be built in the first year to meet the stipulations of Group A, and this meant that the M3 had to go down the regular production line in Munich, as the motorsport factory in Garching wouldn't have been able to cope. Famously, the only body panel the M3 shares with a standard E30 is the bonnet. As soon as you see an M3, the fabulous box arches are an instantly obvious upgrade. The rear window also has more rake, and the boot lid sits 1.5 inches higher to improve airflow. Under that standard bonnet lies a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine with an iron block mated to a shortened head from the M88 straight 6 that was in the mighty M1. A 4-cylinder was chosen by the famous Paul Rocher not only to save weight, but also because it would be able to rev higher, important for the race cars. Here's a fact for you. The S14 engine, S14B25 in this iteration, was called S14 because apparently it only took 14 days for the prototype to be up and running, which is incredible really, isn't it? 2 weeks. The 5-speed gearbox is a Getrag 265, but only the European M3s have the famous dogleg, America and Japan having a conventional H-pattern 260 box. Fundamentally, the suspension remains the same as more mundane E30s, with McPherson struts and semi-trailing arms, but the M3 gets wider tracks, a front anti-roll bar linked to the struts, a stiffer rear anti-roll bar, 3 times more steering caster angle, and stronger wheel bearings, as well as shorter, stiffer springs and uprated dampers. But what of this? Model number AK07, the Sport Evolution, or Evo 3 as it's sometimes known. Although not the rarest special edition, that being the Roberto Ravaglia edition, just 600 Sport Evolutions were produced, and they were a homologation car in their own right. The road cars run 16-inch wheels, but the front wings have a 10mm greater arch to allow for the fitment of 18-inch wheels on the race cars. You've also got 3 different settings on the aerodynamics, so the front splitter and the rear wing. You had Monza, which was obviously the low drag version, then you had the normal middle setting, and then the rather cool Nürburgring setting, which was to give the most amount of downforce. The Sport Evo also has thinner glass, a lighter boot lid and bumpers, brake cooling ducts in place of fog lights, and it sits 10mm lower, and the grille slats were reprofiled for better aerodynamics. By increasing the bore and fitting a longer stroke crankshaft, the engine's displacement went up to 2.5 litres, another homologation necessity allowing the race team to make the most of the new touring car regs in Germany and France. The inlet valves were also enlarged and the exhaust valves were sodium filled, more aggressive camshafts were fitted, special nozzles sprayed oil under the pistons to keep them cool. A larger exhaust manifold and a chrome-tipped exhaust were also specified for this model, and all Sport Evolutions were equipped with catalysts. Power increased to 238 horsepower at 7,000 RPM, but peak torque actually decreased very slightly by 4 pounds-foot to 177 pounds-foot at 4,750 RPM compared to the Evo 2. Finally, want to know if you're looking at a 2.5 litre engine as opposed to a 2.3? Well, they were fitted with 8mm thick red plug leads, whereas other cars were fitted with 7mm black plug leads. This particular car has had one owner from new, back in 1990, and there are a few little differences on this. So this has got the full leather package, it's got pretty much all the big ticket items, it's got air conditioning as well, it's also got the electronically adjustable Bose dampers, so you've got K, N and S for comfort, normal and sport down here. You've also in this car got the little Alpina digital cockpit readout, which is rather fun, taking out where one of the vents would normally be. So what's it like to drive an E30 M3? Well, the thing that's perhaps surprising, you know the balance is going to be just wonderful. But it's almost all about the front end. It's a beautifully balanced car, but you tend to think about what the front end is doing. And actually, when you look at the chassis changes for the E30 M3 over a standard 3 Series at a time, a lot of them really did focus around the front end. In the past, I might have even described it as feeling like a really well set up front-wheel drive car, which it just sounds really odd. As a BMW, it's rear-wheel drive, it's all going to be about the rear, but it's not. You really concentrate on getting that front end, and then it's just beautifully balanced all the way through the corner, through this long corner. Then once you've got the front in, you can just play with the rear. Obviously in full racing mode with I think the 2.5 engine went all the way up to about 380 brake horsepower, and obviously with different suspension, and Patrick Schneier's behind the wheel, let's not forget. Then undoubtedly it was more oversteery, but as a road car, these are just beautifully balanced. Obviously they feel really small. I mean, you've got the A-pillars right here. In the wet, it just dances around.
On the track, there doesn't feel like there is a huge range of adjustment via the electronically controlled Bose dampers, and the modern backside will have no qualms about turning them up to their firmest setting fairly quickly. Steering feels a little slow initially, but then perfect once you're pushing on. The long throw of the gear shift takes a bit of getting used to, with particular deliberation needed for that initial change from dogleg first to second, but once acclimatised there is tactility to treasure. This Sport Evo actually has a slightly shorter final drive to give it even better acceleration, but the owner of this car has from the factory a map to allow a few more revs in order to bring the top speed back up to 155 miles an hour. How cool is that?
0 to 60 on a Sport Evo is 6.1 seconds, which is really not that quick, obviously, by modern standards. Certainly not by some of the other cars we're going to drive in this series. But the car somehow still really just lives up to expectation. You think it's not going to be able to compete, it's going to feel totally out of its depth, but such is the wonderful balance of this car, the interactivity, I mean, all the feel you've got from the steering and through the chassis. It's just brilliant. There's quite a lot of lean into a corner like this, but you can always feel where it is, and then midway just adjust it with the throttle. Just a little lift and you can get the nose to tuck in, rear to come round, and then just play it all the way through the corner. Love this corner here, it just feels so good, just drifting all the way through there. That is absolutely prime E30 M3, and it's why it makes it such a good road car today as well, because of course it's small, so it fits on the road perfectly. I love it.
The boxy little E30 just feels so light on its feet, and inevitably there is a certain added inspiration when you're behind that 3-spoke wheel from the knowledge of all those race and rally wins. By the time the last one rolled off the production line in 1991, over 17,000 E30 M3s had been produced, and a legend had been born.
There might have been 4 generations of M3 since this, but my word, this still lives up to expectations. This is what they all have to live up to.